So about 5 years ago, Sarah and I were in and two of our children at that point, we were in a really comfortable place, and we really felt God kind of putting a tug on our heart that we were supposed to make another move that we weren't ready for. You've heard me talk about kind of our move here and kind of the process that we went through there, but there were struggles, and there were, those wrestlings when it came to moving here because we loved where we were, but there were even more 5 years ago because I really felt that God was calling us into a deep, deep mission field full of people who had some really backwards beliefs. And just beliefs that I didn't know if I wanted to raise my children under those circumstances. Because what if my children started to believe those things? And what if my children started to follow those practices that these people lived? And I'm talking about, he called us into Bronco country, into Denver Bronco territory. And I didn't know if I wanted to raise my kids in an area where they cheer for the Denver Broncos. But we listened and we went, and for 4.5 years, I tried to express to those people living under those horrible belief systems that there is a better way, and that their way was full of errors, and their approach to life and their approach to football had so many faults in it. And I would point out that you have sold your soul for one Super Bowl. For one Super Bowl of a has-been quarterback who played for the Indianapolis Colts for like 40 years or something like that. You sold your souls to get this one Super Bowl, and now for decades, you're going to have to live in this horrible purgatory. Why can't you listen? Why can't you realize that cheering for the Chiefs is a better plan? And for years, I would get up on the platform, and it would be a day where the Chiefs and the Broncos were playing each other, and I would wear my Chiefs gear, and I would walk out. For the first couple of years, we would lose because they still had Peyton Manning. But then they started to realize that we had a plan that was going to take us into years and decades, hopefully into the future of Super Bowls and wins, while they began to lose. But it didn't matter. No matter how many times I told them that they were wrong, no matter how many times I gave them all the reasons that they were wrong, and put a very clear case in front of them they were wrong, people like my in-laws who are sitting here in the front row, well, third row, because we don't ever use the front two rows, but actually we are using the front two rows over here today. But people like my in-laws continue to believe that the Broncos are the team to cheer for. So I hope that today you would pray for them, but you would also pray for all those people that I left when I got out of that horrible, horrible place where I tried to tell them now, actually, I loved living in Casper. There were a lot of good things, but that part was tough. That part was really tough. For 4.5 years, though, I did spend time telling my students how wrong they were with who they were cheering for. And as we come into the final stretch of election season again, and I think back to those conversations that I had over those 4.5 years, I realized my approach to trying to convince people that they were cheering for the wrong football team was not all that different from the approach that we so often take to trying to convince people that they are walking down a wrong path in life. We spend all of our time trying to tell people how they're wrong instead of trying to tell people what the truth really is. I don't know how many times I've sat and I've watched a politician over the past, really my whole life, but especially over the past year or so, and I've been sitting there and I've been thinking, stop telling me what you disagree with about the other person's plan and tell me your plan. Tell me what you believe. Don't just tell me where their belief is wrong. Tell me what you believe. But then I stop and I realize, man, that's what I do all the time when I'm having these conversations. I spend more time talking about how I disagree with the other person's plan than why the plan that I believe is correct is correct. And my guess is that you guys fall into that too. We are 9 days out from the election. We are who knows how far out from finding out who won the election. But we are 9 days away from the day that people go to the polls to vote. Now, I know there's already the early voting and all that, but the official election day, we are 9 days, hopefully I'm not going to keep saying that over and over again. I think we get what I'm trying to say there. 9 days out. 9 days of continuing to hear the same messages we've been hearing about how the other person is so wrong. And 9 days away, or 9 more days of getting on social media and seeing constant posts of how the other person is wrong and how we need to vote this person out of office, or please, we can't vote this person into office, and here's all the reasons why you shouldn't do those things. 9 days away of believers in Christ continually talking about how we need to vote one of these two men in because they're going to be the ones that are going to save us. 9 days away from so many people continuing to miss that neither one of these two men are going to save us. That neither one of the two people, or, obviously there are other options, but we mostly have two options that we typically choose from. 9 more days of arguments about which one we should or should not vote for, counting on that person to save us, when we should know as believers in Christ that neither one of these men, neither one of these parties are going to save us. 9 more days of seeing posts on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is of how could you call yourself a Christian if you're going to vote for this other person? 9 more days of people saying that, but my guess is not being bold enough to come in front of somebody and tell them to their face or ask them to their face, how can you call yourself a Christian if you're going to vote for that person? Here's the truth. There are Democrats sitting in this room. There are Republicans sitting in this room. There are independents sitting in this room. There might even be some who are members of the birthday party, which is what Kanye West is running under. There are probably members, well, maybe not probably, but there are maybe members of the birthday party sitting in this room right now. Would you be bold enough to look at the person in front of you in person and say, how could you call yourself a Christian if you're going to vote for that person? Or do we have to hide behind social media and hide behind, we'll just have those conversations where in the groups of people who agree with us and who will support us, that we can make those claims with them? Because we've talked in here about how if we're going to handle disagreements correctly and handle conflicts correctly, we're supposed to have those conversations face to face. And we're supposed to be willing to have those conversations with people and not just tear them down behind their back, even if we're tearing them down anonymously by just saying that this is a blanket statement. If you vote for, then how can you call yourself a Christian? So we are so wrapped up, I think, and when I say we, I want to make very clear that I am not just talking about you. And I'm not just talking about people who are not in this room. I'm talking about myself as well. Because it is so easy for me to get involved in a conversation where I talk about what the other person, it's so easy for me to sit and watch the debate a few nights ago and walk away and just talk about all the mistakes that the other person made, the person that I agree less with. It's so easy for me to just, it's enjoyable for me, I'm not going to lie, to sit there and talk about how the other person is so wrong, but not take the time to have a conversation with somebody who actually believes what that other person believes in. We get so wrapped up in all the different policies and all the different procedures and all the different plans that are out there that we talk all about those. And this morning, what I want to challenge us with, as we are 9 days away from the election, is let's stop arguing about all of these different policies and which party is correct, and instead, let's start spreading the truth. In Ephesians chapter 4, if you want to turn there, we're going to start in verse 14. The Apostle Paul has just gotten done writing about what, at this point, we will be mature Christians. And this is some of what it looks like to be a mature Christian when he gets to this part in verse 14. He says, "Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth." This sounds a lot like the world that we live in. That no matter, you turn on a station, you turn on a news station, there's something on there, and some of it's true and some of it's not. And it is so easy to just buy into everything that our person is saying. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. Instead, we will speak the truth in love. Man, this is a verse that we love to use, that Christians love to use, that churches love to use, that pastors love to use, that I love to use, because I love to just speak the truth and be like, you know what? I'm sorry this hurts, but guess what? The truth hurts. And just throw it out there and be like, no, Paul told me, Paul was inspired by Jesus when he said that I'm supposed to speak the truth. I start by talking to you lovingly, and I give you some love first, but now I get to speak the truth, and I get to hit home, and I get to hit home hard. But we're supposed to be speaking the truth in love, not we love first and then we speak the truth. It's the truth comes out still in love. And yes, sometimes it hurts, but we're still supposed to be sharing the truth lovingly. And I've wondered, as I've looked at this over and over again over the course of my life, I've started to wonder if maybe the truth that Paul is writing about is not the kind of truth that we like to use this for. See, I've heard multiple messages over the course of my life. I've taught multiple times over the course of ministry that this is the verse that says you should just correct somebody all the time. Just make sure you're doing it lovingly. Because we're supposed to speak the truth in love. But maybe this verse is less about always correcting people and making sure that they believe true things about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and it's talking about the truth that we're supposed to share in love. One of the big things that's on the docket right now is discussions over taxes. What are taxes going to look like depending on which party wins? And we vote based off of whether or not we like the person's tax policy, whether or not we agree with the person's tax policy. We're getting close to the end of the year where we're starting to look for, okay, where are the tax deductions that we can take? If you're looking for a tax deduction, Monroe City First Church of God is a great place to, give a little bit extra to, and you can write that off. It's great. No, but we're looking for those places, those things that we can use for tax deductions. There's arguments over how much we should take advantage of. There's arguments over how much people should be taxed. Jesus was once approached, or he was once given the opportunity to talk with a man who he disagreed with about how taxes were handled. He disagreed, I would guess, strongly with how taxes were handled and how this man in particular handled taxes. And rather than walk up to this man and say, you know what? Your tax policy is horrible. You are a corrupt individual. You need to fix your life. You need to fix your plan. You need to go talk to your employer and tell them that they are messed up and they need to fix their plan. Go talk to your government, because the man was employed by the government. Go talk to them. Tell them they need to figure this out. Instead, with this man that Jesus disagreed with, he said, hey, can we share a meal together? Can we sit down and talk to one another? And now we don't have a report of what all went on in that conversation, but based on the rest of the life of Jesus that we see, I would gather that Jesus spent some time telling this man about how he was loved. And he spent some time telling this man about how he was an image bearer of the Creator. And he spent some time talking with this man about how much better his life could be if he stopped taking advantage of others and instead loved on other people. And maybe he gave this man a glimpse of the sacrifice that Jesus was going to make just a few years down the road. We don't know what all went on in that conversation, but what we do know is that that man walked out realizing that there needed to be a change. And he walked out from that dinner and said that I'm going to give back everything that I've stolen. And I'll even give back more if I need to. All the corruption that I've lived by, I'm going to give that back. Now, we like to take that story and make a nice kid's song out of it. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. But all the stuff that was going on and all the love that Jesus was speaking in truth as he had a conversation with that man about a policy that they had a very big disagreement on. There's a lot of disagreement right now about whether or not homosexual marriage should be legal or not. Whether or not LGBTQ plus is a sin or whether it's a natural thing. And Jesus was once approached by a woman, or a woman was brought to him, I should say. She didn't walk up to him willingly, who was living a very alternative lifestyle that he disagreed with. In fact, she was brought to him by a bunch of men who agreed with Jesus when it came to the fact that this woman was living a lifestyle that they all disagreed with. They caught this woman in the act of adultery and brought her to Jesus. Now, this would have been a great opportunity for Jesus to just be like, all right, I've got all of these people around me that agree with me that this is wrong, that what she's doing is wrong. They're going to back me up if I jump all over her and I tell her how she needs to fix her life. This is easy. This isn't even hard. Like, her word's going to mean nothing. If she goes out and says, Jesus mistreated me, it doesn't matter, because really at the end of this, if we do what we are allowed to do, she's going to be dead anyway. So she's not going to have a story to tell. Instead, Jesus got down and he wrote in the dirt. And he just kind of waited a little bit. And then he asked a question. He said, well, you know what? You guys know what's right and wrong. Any of you who have never messed up, any of you who has no sin, go ahead and throw a stone at her, and then we can get this party started. We can take this woman down. And he got back down and he started writing in the dirt again. And before he knew it, he looked up, and all of these men were gone. And it was just him and the woman. Now, he didn't tell her, hey, guess what? You're scot-free. Go back and do everything that you were doing. He said, where are all these men that condemned you? They all left. I don't condemn you either. Now go and sin no more. He didn't stop and have this conversation with her. Now let's talk about all of the ways that you're wrong. Because the truth is, she knew that she was wrong. But what he showed her was love. And what he showed her was that in a society that devalued women even worse than we can sometimes devalue women, in that society, he showed her that she was an image bearer of the Creator. And she was loved by the Creator. He spoke the truth to this woman in love. He didn't tell her that, hey, you know what you're doing is perfectly fine. Just go back, find another guy, start sleeping with him. It'll be fine. Your life will be great. He showed her her value. And I believe that in that, she realized that isn't the lifestyle that she needed to keep living. There was a woman who was living by a policy that he disagreed with, but he didn't jump all over her and tell her all the ways that she was wrong. Let's go back to Ephesians chapter 4. In verse 16, he makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. With the Lord's authority, I say this: live no longer as the Gentiles do, for they are hopelessly confused. Their minds are full of darkness. They wander far from the life God gives because they have closed their minds and hardened their hearts against him. They have no sense of shame. They live for lustful pleasure and eagerly practice every kind of impurity. But that isn't what you learned about Christ. Since you have heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. Stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are all parts of the same body. And church, as we are in 9 days away, we are in the home stretch. I have to say that there are a lot of followers of Christ, or people who claim to be followers of Christ, that throw out everything that they see, every meme that they see, and then find out it wasn't true in the first place. But it fit the narrative that they wanted to have fit, and so they put it out there. That is called telling a lie. We have to take responsibility for what we are putting out there. Now I totally lost my spot. Because I didn't plan on saying that. All right, here we go. Don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. If you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good hard work and then give generously to others in need. Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful, so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Do not bring sorrow to God's Holy Spirit by the way you live. Remember, he has identified you as his own, guaranteeing that you will be saved on the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the examples of Christ. For he loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. Do we stop and ask ourselves, what was the example that Christ put forward? I think it matters what's going to happen over the next 4 years. I think it matters what's going to happen over the next 9 days. I'm not going to stand up here and be like, you know what? Don't vote because it doesn't matter, because neither one of these guys are going to fix the problem anyway. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's important for us to recognize what's going on in our country. But I think it's important for us to stop. It's important for us to stop just debating about all of the policies that are out there and how other people are so wrong. And it's important for us as followers of Christ to speak the truth in love. Now, as a pastor, they tell you, don't give your stance. Some people tell you, I should say, not everybody. Don't give your stance on some of the big policy issues, because it's a great way to have somebody come at you and attack you and take you down because you took a stand, and well, what about this little caveat, and what about this one over here? I'm going to break that rule, because there are some big things that are being discussed right now. And there are some big things that people are fighting over, and big things that they're making decisions over. I believe that abortion is wrong. I believe that we were knitted together in our mother's wombs before we were born, and that we became a child of God at that moment. But I also know that I do not know what is going through the mind of a woman who is having to make that decision. I know that I do not know what is going through the mind of a parent who has a child who is having to make that decision. I don't know what's going through the mind of a couple who has to decide between losing the mother or losing the child. I don't know what's going through the mind of a person who doesn't believe that that is a life in there. I don't know what's going through the mind of someone who believes it's just a group of cells. And just sitting around and talking to people who agree with me is not going to lovingly communicate to people how you are a created image bearer of the Creator. How you are loved by someone who gave his life for you. How even if you follow through with this thing that I disagree on, you are still loved by that person who gave his life for you. That he will always sacrifice for you. See, I could walk around and I could just post all the different things about abortion as to why I disagree with it, but that is not going to show people that I love them and that there is a truth bigger than all of those things. Am I willing to have that difficult conversation? Am I willing to look somebody in the eye who is considering or who has considered and just tell them, hey, if you commit this, if you do this, you're on your way to hell. Or maybe there's a different, loving approach to that. If you post it on Facebook or you say it in your groups, I hope you're willing to say it to the face of somebody who's going through it. I believe that acting upon homosexual urges is a sin. But I also admit that I don't know what it feels like to have those urges in the first place. I have my own sins that I deal with, and my own urges and temptations that I deal with. But I don't know what it's like to have those. I understand those who look to scriptures and try and find the ways to make it acceptable. Because we all do that. We all open up our scriptures and try to find ways to make our temptations an acceptable practice in life. To justify the things that we're doing, to say, well, that was a different context. We do it with so many different things. I understand why people would do that with such a big topic like homosexuality. And the longer I was in youth ministry, the more I realized that just standing up and saying, you're wrong, isn't going to get the job done. But instead, I started to take the approach of, you know what? You are an image bearer of the Creator. And there was a man who died for you, who sacrificed for you. And he did that regardless of what you do. He loves you regardless of what you do. And that won't change. I believe that Black lives matter. And I don't have a problem saying those three words. And I know that there are people who say, as soon as you say that, you are endorsing a movement. I don't believe that that's true. I don't agree with several areas of the movement. But I do believe that Black lives matter. And I don't believe that the response to people who are saying that is, no, all lives matter, or blue lives matter, or whatever else we want to throw back at them. I believe that we need to stop and consider that I don't know what it's like to be a black person in the United States of America. And I can say all I want, that they are overreacting, that they are making this thing a bigger deal than it is. I could say that all day long, but you know what? I will never know what it feels like to be a black individual in America, or a brown, or Asian, or anything other than a white guy. I'll never know what that feels like. And so I don't feel like I need to respond, no. All lives matter. I believe that I can hear that, and I can say, you know what, you're right. Black lives do matter. Because you are an image bearer of the Creator. And Jesus Christ died for you. And then maybe in the course of that conversation, we might be able to also discuss how Jesus Christ died for all lives. And Jesus Christ died for those who choose a profession, and he died for the blue lives. Maybe not. Because as we have these conversations, and as we truly speak the truth in love, we can't just listen to them just waiting for the chance for us to get to put in our opinion. We have to let the conversation go where the conversation is going to go. I believe that's what Jesus did. I believe that Jesus frustrated people like crazy when they asked him what he believed about different things and where he stood on different things. Because he wouldn't just give them an answer. Instead, he would ask them a question, or he would show them their value. And he wouldn't just say, yep, you are right. I mean, even to the point that when he's talking about murder, he says, yes, murdering somebody is wrong, but you know what else is wrong? Holding anger in your heart. Hey, adultery is wrong, but you know what else is wrong? Lusting after somebody in your heart. He constantly took it back to, where's your heart? Where's your heart? He told us, and we can read it in what we call the book of John, he told us that we would be identified by our love for one another. Not by how strongly we can argue different points, but by our love for one another. Now, do I believe that those other things matter? Absolutely. I believe that they matter. I don't think we should just take the approach of, you know what, everybody just do whatever you want, and we'll just keep singing Kumbaya in our churches. But how we respond and how we have those conversations and what we lead with matters too. And I believe that when he said that we speak the truth in love was more about we speak the truth of the gospel and the hope that we have in him. Not the truth as to why you're wrong, but it's the truth as to who Jesus was and who Jesus is and the power that you can have when the Holy Spirit comes inside of you. I think that's why he didn't tell that woman all the things she was doing wrong, and instead he just said, I don't condemn you either, go and sin no more, because he had shared the truth with her, and the truth would continue to do its work after that moment without him sitting down and having a 45-minute conversation with her about all of her faults and all of her failures. Because when was the last time that worked for you? That if somebody just sat down for 45 minutes and told you what a failure you were, that you're like, oh, I should fix my ways. It doesn't work when they do it to us. Why would we think it's going to work when we do it to them? I think, well, Jesus obviously isn't on the docket. He's not somebody that we can vote for. You can write his name in. He's not going to be the president of the United States. You can go for it. It's not going to happen. But I think that if Jesus were walking and Jesus were in these debates, you know what I think the church would often do? I think the church would often call him soft. I don't think the church would vote for Jesus, because I don't think that he would attack as much as we want him to attack. Because instead of attacking, Jesus got down on a knee and wrote in the dirt and waited for everybody to leave. Instead of attacking, he went to dinner. I think we'd call him soft. But I also think that he called us to follow him and to do it the way that he did it, which is not the easy way. It's not the fun way. It's not the way that sometimes I get the most enjoyment out of, because I've admitted to you, I love to argue, and I love to have conversations about why I'm right. I love those kinds of things. But Jesus didn't call us to do what's easy. He called us to follow him, and he called us to speak the truth in love. So I hope that over the next 9 days, I hope that we can ask ourselves, before we say anything in a conversation, before we say anything on social media, am I sharing the truth in love at this moment? Is this post, is this meme, is this conversation with my group of people, is this actually going to show people that they are created in the image of God, or is this just trying to make a point? Where is my heart in this? I hope we can stop. And we can stop doing things the way the world does it. And we can instead be identified by how much we love other people. How much we love the person who supports abortion. How much we love the person who supports the LGBTQ+. How much we love the person who goes out and shouts Black Lives Matter and marches in the movement, not just the phrase. How much we love the person who follows a different tax plan than we do, or is going to vote for the other person. I hope we can be identified by our love for those people. See, there was a man who about 2,000 years ago came down from his place in heaven, and he could have set the record straight on so many things. He knew all the answers. Instead, he sacrificed himself for every single individual who would ever walk on the face of planet Earth. And it is only because of him, not because of how good we are, not because of what we believe. It is only because of him that we can say we are free. It's not because a bunch of people 200 some years ago fought for freedom for a country called the United States of America. It's because a man 2,000 years ago went to a cross and died, that we can truly say we are free. We are free.